Hello and welcome to Supplier Soundbytes, S&P Global Mobility's concise autology podcast series, where we sit down with supplier experts to unpack what's really changing in automotive and why it matters. One topic, one clear takeaway in under 10 minutes. Today, we're delighted to welcome back Andy Travers, CEO of Ceres Holographics. Hi, Andy. Great to have you back.
Hi, Matthew. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. Today, we're going to be looking at a space that's been discussed for many years, actually, head-up displays, but which now seems to be entering a much more interesting phase. Ceres is taking a notably different approach too. Instead of treating displays as separate screens layered into the cockpit, the company is embedding holographic optical films directly into the windscreen itself, turning the glass into part of the display experience. So in practical terms, this isn't just another dashboard feature. It's a rethink of what the windscreen can actually do. And that raises some broader questions too. How much information should really be presented to drivers, how scalable this kind of technology is, and what it could ultimately mean for driver experience, safety, and the future design of vehicle interiors. So let's start with the bigger picture, if we may. When people think about windscreen-based displays, they often still see them as just another head-up display feature. But from your perspective, what's the biggest shift happening in this space that may be overlooking?
Good question, Matthew. I mean, the first thing is that this isn't really an extension of the classic head-up display, which I think we understand has almost met its limit in terms of value of the user experience, and that it isn't that good or useful for some of the content, as users want to consume in the modern day. So I think that's one of the things. And it's perhaps one of the reasons why OEMs haven't actually put as much effort into improving content for HUDs. And in fact, it's one of the reasons why I don't think it's been adopted in greater numbers. Transparent display, or based on the holographic technology, actually also needs a whole new approach to how it's used in terms of the content you want to display and how you want that to be presented.
That's great. Thanks very much. There's a lot of discussion around the term holographic at the moment. So where do you draw the line between technology that is genuinely holographic in a technical sense and what is effectively advanced projection being marketed that way, would you say?
Another great question, Matthew. I mean, holographic is one of the most misused descriptors in the modern English language. It can cover everything from real holograms to a stage show in Las Vegas, right? So the first thing is everything we do or create is from the real scientific base of real holography. And by that, I mean, we use our technology to record wavefronts in a material. And we use those holograms to present either a full color 3D image or indeed use it to guide projected light, in the case of these holographic optical elements, to a recipient viewer. So I guess the link between the two in your question, the holography and the displays, is that the HOEs can be used to create advanced projection solutions, which are at the same time transparent and therefore can be embedded in glass, or indeed a car windshield, a car side window, or indeed a building's window. So,
yeah, interesting. The possibilities are endless. I just wonder, when OEMs try to move from concept demonstrations to real production vehicles, where do you tend to see the biggest friction points emerge? Is it mainly around the performance of the optical films themselves, or more around integration into laminated glass processes, supply chains, and vehicle platforms, would you say?
yeah, so in the first point, we have actually conquered the display performance barriers, the must-haves, brightness, sharpness, uniformity. But now through industrialization, we've also removed the remaining supply chain challenges of scaling and the really tricky lamination in windshields, and even adoption by the tier one players who must actually deliver the whole system to the end OEM customers. The actual remaining hurdles, I think, are more subtle than the obvious technology barriers. Firstly, there is friction related to the whole question of what do we use these displays for. I've mentioned that already, but it can still stall or slow the adoption of this technology across OEMs because they literally don't know what to do with it. And importantly, secondly, is there's friction caused by a lack of understanding of the components of these new systems because the value now is shifting from just a single HUD box, for instance, or a single display on your dash, to actually a system that part of the value is embedded in the windshield. And there's actually a subsequent increased cost to that windshield that is offset by lower projection units, but it takes time for the procurement departments and the auto companies to actually understand that and be very comfortable with that. So that those are two of the more subtle barriers.
Thanks very much for that. Some very subtle nuances as well. Your technology, as we understand it, sits inside the windscreen, which is already a highly optimized, high volume automotive component. But what has to happen for holographic films to scale through automotive glass manufacturing without introducing costs or complexity that OEMs simply won't accept?
Well, the full product optimization is, of course, driven by our capabilities, but it's also alongside the partners' manufacturing efficiencies that will bring the possibility of much higher, volume production, better yields, and that will drive the system ownership cost for the OEMs down. And if you drive that cost down, that will drive scale and adoption. And so that understanding that this system comes in two parts as well is also a big factor on driving sort of uptake and optimization, and that will keep costs down. So it's quite subtle. But one advantage we have, Matthew, is that we looked into this a lot, and the fact that the holographic film windshield, it's essentially a materials-based system element, which means that unit costs will be able to be driven down more effectively than some solutions which rely on a combination of a lot of exotic components like laser-based HUD technologies, diodes, etc., compute engines, etc. So we believe with our partners we can really drive the unit cost down, and that will drive uptake across OEMs.
Super interesting. Thank you very much for those points. Just looking ahead over the next 3 to 5 years, where do you think the real competitive advantage in this space will sit? I'm just wondering, will it be with companies controlling the optical layer itself, like Ceres, or with OEMs and software platforms deciding what information gets displayed on top of it, would you say?
So I see there's two dimensions to that, to the answer to that. One is in making the stuff, and the other dimension is actually using this stuff. In terms of making it, we think we've really got a strong competitive advantage in the way that these films are made, because we've got this software controlled design and mastering process, and also the replication technology for scaling. So we're well positioned on that front. But in terms of who will benefit most and shown to be on top of it, as it were, it will be those OEMs that want to explore really quickly now how to use this type of display in the context of an in-car experience, because it's actually so different from either classic HUD or normal console or cluster type displays. So I think that those OEMs who adopt and drive investigation into the new user experience and define how the content's presented, they will develop a fast competitive advantage for their brand.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. And just before we wrap up, if there's one key idea or takeaway you'd want our listeners to remember from this conversation, Andy, what would it be?
Well, it's related to the last point, that fact that basically the adoption and gaining advantage from this technology is not obvious. It's not just a matter of plugging it in and presenting the same old content in there that's on existing display solutions. OEMs really need to start viewing this technology as a brand new blank canvas, essentially. And they need to revisit the whole concept of the fact that actually less is more, and it's about the right content at the right time during the journey or whatever you're doing with that user, that experience inside the car. And I think that's a key takeaway, that the technology is there, it's ready to be adopted. but the OEMs need to start viewing this technology in a different way.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Andy. And that's just about all we have time for this episode of Supplier Soundbytes from S&P Global Mobility. Thank you very much for spending time with us. If you found this useful, please do follow us on LinkedIn for more insights from across the supplier ecosystem, and keep an eye out for new episodes coming soon. Bye for now.